Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today to the Special Village Board meeting. This is Thursday, May 22nd at 9 a.m. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Spurling.
Here.
Trustee Lee. Trustee Hines.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Here.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
Trustee Bond.
Here.
And we're all present. Moving on to public comment, we have a 2-minute opportunity for any member of the public. Please state your name and sign in for us. She just gave it to me. When you're done.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Bill Zinos. My address 2756 Heyman Way, Aurora, Illinois, and my phone number 630-898-9056. I'm here to talk to you about, I have a property on Lake Street, 1100 South Lake Street, Aurora, Montgomery. And last meeting you had, accidentally, I happened to be here. And I find something I never expect, that two of the signs CBS has listed on my property for a 10-year period. They want to exchange one of the two signs with a different location. They never ask me anything. They never say, Bill, we tend to do moving a sign out or something. They don't say nothing about compensation or anything. The only thing I hear, for the other location, they get $500,000 over the 15 years remaining, I think. Vice mine, which is $2,500 each for every year. We're talking about 4 or 5 years remain, other $10,000. You know, this money I receiving from CBS barely covers the expenses I have right now: maintenance, property taxes, cutting grass, and stuff like that. Okay, so I don't think it's right to exchange one sign with the other when your plans are all the signs on the city limits of Montgomery to be eliminated. If you give them the right to remove the sign farther in because the state takes part of the road, it's your right to do it. I'm not going to tell you what to do, what not to do. But you cannot mix them with mine. And when you say my property has to be signs taken down in a few years, if you give them right over there to remove in, this is going to be there forever, for the next 100 years. I don't know for how long, you know. So that's what I'm here to tell you for. Because if you take it down, then you're going to put me in a legal battle with CBS because I'm losing income and I have to pay off my pocket, you know, to upkeeping the property. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we won't be addressing the billboard issue today. It's not on the agenda, but I think we will be addressing that at one of our future meetings, probably.
It actually probably won't be till July. I checked with them. June 23rd is the next time. Obviously, we can have all of you together, and that did not work for CBS. So we'll look at a meeting after that. We're not sure yet. It'll probably be in July.
Thank you. We'll move on to the short consent agenda this morning. I always do that. I'll read the consent and entertain a motion for approval. Minutes of the Village Board meeting of May 12th, accounts payable through May 16th, 2014, the cancellation of the Village Board meeting of May 27th, and the Big H Carnival permit. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Moved in second. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Hines. Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries 6-0. Move on to items for separate action. The first one is Resolution 2014-010, initiating the submission of a public question to impose a non-home rule sales tax for the Village of Montgomery. So we've seen this resolution in this exact form, I believe, previously. We didn't take action on it at the time. If there are comments and questions, we can certainly entertain those. If there are none, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second. Moved and second. Take the roll, please.
seconded?
Second by Trustee Marisak.
Okay. Trustee Spurling,
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman, Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
And if I were entitled to a vote on this, I would vote in favor of it. Let the record reflect that. So that carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item B this evening, which is ordinance 1616 regarding a property tax rebate. This is a waiver of first and passage on the second reading. This we have not seen in this exact form before. You guys were given that ordinance earlier this week, and I know that we probably do have some comments on that, and there are some blanks that we have to fill in. So if staff doesn't have any report or summary on this, we can entertain questions. Do you have?
The only thing I would offer is just what you need to decide on it, which there are really three things, maybe two. One is the percent that you're rebating. You talked about 5, 10, 15%, I think. So you'd need to direct which of those, and we can fill that in right here, right now, so that you can act on this today. And whether or not it's renewing, forever, or whether or not it's for a period of years, and if it is for a period of years, what that period of years is. And then on page 4 of 5, paragraph 4, it's the actual amount of rebate per residence, because although we insert a percentage in the beginning, Director Van Voren had indicated that it would be virtually impossible to try to calculate the exact amount per valuation per residence, so it's a block amount. So depending on which percentage you pick, I think you know what that number is and can inform of that, right? I was kind of hoping we could insert it now.
I can calculate that fairly quickly.
All I have, unless you have questions, the board did direct me to gilt the future, and so I believe I did my very best.
And then some.
Yes.
You asked me to, I followed direction.
And thank you. Trying to find that. I think it's at the beginning.
The results.
Yeah.
And they ramp up in level of guilt, so if you don't like any of them, feel free to say we should take one or two out. if
Certainly.
that's the case.
Well, in the recitals, I would pose for consideration that the last three whereases related to future boards, that maybe we keep the first one that says future boards are hereby reminded, and maybe consider striking the next two, the language of which becomes a little more strident.
Anybody that's opposed to that? I think it conveys the message with or without it, so.
And if I may, then I might propose that the period of time, I've been conflicted about this because it's tempting to make it coincide with the terms of the board as they're elected. But this would become effective before a new board would be elected.
Yes, it would.
So a thought for consideration might be a 5-year period, which in today's economy is a pretty long ways to try to look out.
Okay. And what percent would you propose?
I would favor 15% for 5 years.
Any other thoughts on those two items there? Percent and the length? Haven't really had an opportunity to discuss it with anybody individually, so.
I was fine with either the 10 or the 15, and as I said at the last meeting, I'm happy with the 15. The 5-year term, I think stands right. I think that we're dealing with the potential sticky issue here as far as tying the hands of a future board. I would be fine with the 5-year 15.
Trustee Lee, what do you think?
Fine with me.
Okay. If there aren't any, Trustee Marisak?
No, I mean, I'm agreeable to that. I would like to see the years extended further, but
And I don't think anything would prohibit a future board in 5 years to say, this is a good plan, let's keep rolling with this.
so in 5 years, they would
Renew it.
come before them and to renew.
And that would be my intent, if I was still sitting here, to renew that in 5 years, but at least then,
And it would just be a simple vote, correct? And we'd just bring the ordinance before us and say we're going to extend it another 5 years or whatever? Okay.
and realistically, we don't even need an ordinance to be rebating this stuff every year. It could be
No.
part of the budget process.
Correct. The reason that we did it as an ordinance was that you had wanted something more permanent in the record.
Yeah, so we can say that to people, so, okay.
And everybody was good with striking out the last two?
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like 5, 15, strike out the last two.
And we stalled for a
A
while.
number for the,
Justin's had enough time now to use his phone.
Sorry. I will have that number briefly.
Number could be different. Yeah. What's that?
see. Yeah.
That number would be, with 15% would be $45. For a $200,000
You know that he just guessed that exact number, so, no calculator.
I got one, but right there, buddy.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
Real world.
Okay. If there are no other comments or questions on this, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
Matt, I have one more item if we can. There's a passage here that discusses rental property. I'm having a little trouble finding it at the moment.
Probably 3E.
Yes. I just throw this out for consideration. And the concept is this: if the rental property has been a crime hotspot or has been a source of burden for the police department, I would propose that we incorporate that also in this language and withhold the rebate in a situation like that.
I did attempt to do that somewhat on the next page in H. It reads, "Any property not in compliance with village regulations and is in the subject of code violation enforcement proceedings shall not be entitled to said rebate, and said rebate shall be forfeit for the year in question." We could perhaps, you're saying criminal violations. Criminal violations attached to people, not property necessarily, so it's a little tougher to draft that. Typically, when you're talking about criminal violations that relate to the property, that is a code violation. Chief, I'd look to you as well.
Yeah, and Stan, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're arresting the homeowner or the renter, that's what you mean, correct?
Yes.
So I'm not sure how we could do that if,
It wouldn't be an arrest, it would have to be a finding of guilt, too. I mean, anybody can be arrested. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're guilty of anything. What's that?
Yes, I agree.
Now, this only applies, the rebate is only applying to, it's not apartment complexes aren't receiving this rebate, correct?
Well, yes, residential.
Residential.
Including multifamily. Now, the property owner, the person who pays the taxes, is the person who's getting the rebate. And it's only one rebate per pin. So potentially, if an apartment complex is one pin, they're getting $45, not 45 times 100 units or something like that, so.
And this would only hold back on the unit in question.
correct. I didn't drill down to the depth of saying, well, if you've got one pin for 100 units and you're getting $45 and one unit's non-compliant with that provision, we may be overthinking it at that
Well,
point.
and again,
Yeah.
I completely like the thought process that Stan's talking about, but
Yep.
at the end of the day, to a landlord, this is $45
Right.
out of their rental property that they're getting $1,200 a month for.
Mm-hmm.
So the criminal activity thing becomes an enforcement problem legally. I think you have a problem distinguishing who's deciding that they're a nuisance or they're a problem,
Well, if I
to the
could,
point where.
could maybe suggest if we go with it the way it is, I think we've covered probably 80% of what you're talking about, Stan. And then if we find that over the next year or so, if the police department finds that there's a better way to do it, maybe we could bring back an amendment?
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you. I have a motion?
I'd move to approve.
Second?
Moved in second?
I'm sorry, who was the second?
It's always him. Any second.
Okay, trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
And again, if I were voting, I would vote in favor of this. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Well, those were the two main reasons for having this meeting today, and I think just more for the press, that this is the last time when we can get all 7 members of the board here for the next month or so. So it's kind of important for us to take action on both of those sooner rather than later. While we had this meeting, I'll move on to items for discussion. We wanted to get some thoughts from the board about creating a senior advisory committee. We currently do the, Trustee Hines heads up the lunch once a month. And we're kind of looking to make that more formal, get his people that are helping him and anybody else from the public appointed to an actual committee that would then can do more than that or less than that, or basically run with that. So I know that I've talked to a few board members about it. Are there any thoughts on that today?
I got my people to help me when I'm not, or to help out when I'm not there. I got somebody to take over.
Okay.
So I have 7 people on that committee that you had
Awesome.
me bring up.
Yep. Okay.
I think it's a great idea to formalize it. And, you know,
One
Yeah.
downside.
Mhm.
I hate to be a wet blanket, but if you make it a formal committee, it's subject to the Open Meetings Act. So anytime they get together now has to be posted.
Well, I don't think we want to do that.
Sorry.
thought.
Would the same apply to a commission?
Yeah, any sort of formal established committee, ad hoc commission, you name it. When you take that step as a board and create it in a more semi-permanent form, the Open Meetings Act applies.
I think we can figure that out. Because we could put 3, not that I like to do that, but it could be a 3-member board with
I
Trustee
don't
Hines
agree
and-
with Open Meetings Act. We don't need that for the senior luncheon.
Right. That is a nice curveball.
Sorry.
We can think about that.
if they were an advisory, nothing.
Nope, it's the same. The Open Meetings Act is very, very broad and intended to promote transparency. So the moment you start creating something, it's got to be transparent.
And it's not just the number of trustees involved, it's the fact that there is a public gathering.
It's no longer the trustees that we're talking about. The Open Meetings Act covers the
committee.
board and sub-entities of the board, and you define what a sub-entity is by creating it. That's why when Pete acts on his own and he has a group of volunteers, he's not the board, you know, and
Right.
so therefore they aren't a formally recognized entity. But the moment you start talking about it as a, more formal entity, it becomes subject to it.
Rich?
If I might, we ran into this situation, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's not exactly similar, but in Sugar Grove, the EDC met, and there was a standing village board member that came every meeting. We met once a month. Then there was 2 village board members that came. That was still fine, but then there was a third that wanted to attend on a regular basis. And so one of the things that we did was, that constituted then, a potential violation of the Open Meetings Act for the village board having 3 people sitting in on the EDC meeting. So what we did was we published every planned EDC event for a whole year, one time, published it, and I believe that that solved that particular problem. I don't know if publishing every senior lunch when it's going to be once a year or any other planned meetings, if that would suffice.
Publishing solves the issue that I have with it. I just wanted to make sure that the board is aware that that this committee becomes subject to the open meeting.
But I guess my point
I
to
don't agree
trustee Hines would be, if you published once a year, all the known, you know when the dates are going to be for the lunch, correct? If you did that and any other committee meetings, theoretically, that could be all it would take to, unless Steve
I
disagrees.
don't see why we're gonna do that now. I've been running that thing ever since we moved down here, and I've had no problem, so I think I should leave it the way it is, but you have your right to vote the way you want, but I'm voting no.
Yeah. Well, we definitely don't want that. We don't want to do something, we're trying to make it more formal for 2 reasons. One, for the village in the future, if you chose not to run those events, that we'd have a core group of people that were working to keep that going. We want to build on everything that you've done. And also, I think, by, at least in my opinion, more formalizing it would actually give you guys, a section in the budget. You guys can, any money that you raise goes in that way and comes out through your own line item. I know that we have that in the budget this year. So that way it's more formalized in the future. I did have a question on beautification. I think we have many members, don't we? And so if you posted the lunch, you're covered. And if there's, how many people are on beautification?
I think officially we have 8, but we have probably 2 times that are kind of informal that come to our meetings.
I think I don't think we should be bogged down by the Open Meeting Act. I mean, post those meetings, we should be covered there.
I mean, you publish them anyways, don't you, Debbie? I mean, I see them.
They're part of the
newsletter.
I
Yeah, they're part of the
don't,
news.
I don't put the official public notice on the board. That's the only difference.
That's the
We
only
put the
difference.
dates in the newsletter and stuff, but I would just put a notice on the board at what the dates are, and then you would be fine.
I think this also gives us a good avenue for people who are not involved with that right now, who are looking to get involved with Montgomery. We have area churches and residents who have said, I want to get involved, and there's currently right now with Historic, Beautification, Plan Commission. I might be forgetting one, but I think that's the only other standing ones that we currently have. Well, other than, Police Commission, Pension Board, that kind of.
Plan Commission, ZBA, all,
Yeah.
you have many.
So I think we can work around the logistics of it. If that's all right.
Pardon me?
We can work around the logistics of posting it. It's a simple sheet that she'd have to post for the senior luncheon when it's a very public meeting anyway.
Debbie's going to be the one most affected by that.
By formalizing this, we give them a line item in the budget, and it's a benefit.
That's what we're trying to do.
You can do that whether they're subject to the Open Meetings Act or not.
It's a separate line
They
in the budget
do-
this year.
They do have to take the Open Meetings Act training. So you're aware.
Yeah.
It's online, it's on the computer, you've all done it. so.
Yeah.
Well, then, okay, if they're talking about something, now, if there are more than a group of 3, it's now an Open Meetings Act violation, correct?
If it has not been posted, correct. Just like you.
Yeah, I think.
Well,
that-
that's assuming there's 7 members on the board, too.
That is correct.
Well, he just said that there's 7 committee members. I think we're I like the idea and what the intent is, but I
Right.
think we're overcomplicating it, and it's running
Is that an
smoothly, and it's a line item, and you have a core group of people.
Right, but what happens next year, then?
It almost makes it more difficult to discuss the things that they want to discuss.
Because if they're over at
You-
the restaurant and start talking about the senior
Yeah,
luncheon.
do you guys hold meetings currently?
Yeah, not all the time, but after a lot of the lunches, we sit there and talk, all 7 of us.
And that would be posted?
Why would it?
Well,
we
if
made
she
it-
had a sheet out anyway,
Yeah.
you'd be there, you'd be fine. I think formalizing it is probably a good thing for the village, considering that there's funds coming into that committee and funds going out of that committee. and only one member of this board has anything to do with that.
You know, at one time, the whole board voted this down, and I stuck by my guns, because you can't always take everything away from the public and not give them something in return. And I started up, and the whole board voted it no. And Amir Johnson had it put in the newsletter, and we got a response, and that's how come it's here today.
And that, I think that's what we're trying to do, is get people involved with that and have them have a voice on the committee that makes that choice and not,
I got some of the same people that originally came to the very first one still here, except for the ones that passed on. So I'm not for getting another committee. I got a committee, but that's up to you guys.
I think we may have some issues with the people that Pete has on the committee doing the Open Meetings Act training. I don't think they'll do it. So I think that would be a huge problem if we did formalize it.
okay.
And I think that the intent is to make it so that it'll transition and carry forward. But Pete, you know these folks, you do it all the time, and it's not going to go away. It's going to continue on, right? This is a great thing that we do for the community, for the seniors.
Thank you.
Okay.
You know, I do get the idea of formalizing it but in this case, it seems like we're making it more complicated for something that we're doing currently. It's been going on for years. Pete stood behind it, and as long as there's some people that are going to continue to carry it on going forward, and there's a plan in place, I don't know why,
It
if
seems
it's
to
not
be
broke, don't
working
fix
well.
it.
It seems to be working well, how it is right now.
Okay. How do we deal with their expenses for that committee currently? Any expenses that they have? Because I know that they do raise funds, but when they spend funds, who approves that?
And, I mean, trustee Hines purchases some of the things, and then he'll fill out an expense report that I sign off on. The main food usually comes from Riverview. Usually a staff member will pick that up and use a village credit card to pay for it, and then turn in that receipt with the credit card bill. So that's how we handle most of the expenses.
Are you guys comfortable with that?
It's included in our monthly reports.
Yeah, you'll either see a reimbursement to Pete, or you'll just see the Chase bill, which is the credit card bill.
At this point, I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right, I think that's it. We don't have any unfinished business today. Future meetings, you can see there, we've canceled some of them, and we do not have executive session. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Hines?
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
And we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all for making yourselves available this morning.